Good morning, Internet. Yashoda here with West Coast Yoga. Welcome to morning class. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 1, text number 9, which reads as follows. Tatra tatran jasyanam bhavata yad vinishchitam punksam ekanta tasreyas tanna sanktitam arhasi. Translation. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us, in an easily understandable way, what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. We're going to read a few paragraphs of Srila Prabhupada's purport for good measure. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In Bhagavad Gita, worship of the Acharyas is recommended. The Acharyas and Goswamis are always absorbed in thought of the well-being of the general public, especially their spiritual well-being. Spiritual well-being is automatically followed by material well-being. The Acharyas therefore give directions in spiritual well-being for people in general. Foreseeing the incompetencies of the people in this age of Kali, or the Iron Age of Quarrel, the sages requested that Sutta Goswami give a summary of all revealed scriptures, because the people of this age are condemned in every respect. The sages therefore inquired of the absolute good, which is the ultimate good for the people. The condemned state of affairs of the people of this age is described as follows. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangun Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurundina Tarinam. It's important that we isolate the essential principles of religion, because in the age of Kali, many superfluous and sub-religious principles are being introduced, and people are accepting them under false pretense. Spiritual life, in the general sense, from the Vedic perspective, begins on the platform of Brahman. When the living entity achieves the rare human form of life, they can, at times, become a little bit distressed, inquisitive, desirous of wealth, or searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. And this gives them a standing in spiritual life, if they're pious. So the preliminary inquiry into the absolute truth is made on the basis of impersonal realization. The living entity conceives of themselves something like an insect in the spider's web. On one hand, if I'm stuck in the spider's web, I have no freedom of movement. I cannot manifest my own destiny. At the same time, cruel death is approaching, the spider is approaching to devour. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Doshanu, Darshanam. A self-realized person always keeps in the forefront of their mind the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, and this acts as an incentive to pursue Brahman realization. Once we become qualified on the Brahminical platform, we can now inquire further into the subject. Brahmeti Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. After Brahman realization, there is realization of the Paramatma. This Paramatma is a localized expansion of Lord Vishnu, who is the master of Vaikuntha. Kunta means distress. We are living in Kunta, Kunta Loka. However, there's another realm called Vaikuntha. It is part of the spiritual expanse. There is a river separating the material and spiritual worlds called the Vairaj, and conditioned souls are simply unable to cross this river without the Lord's causeless mercy. On the other side of the Vairaj is a large spiritual expanse called the Paravyoma, which is inhabited by many, many thousands of Vaikuntha planets, each of them having a predominant form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his four-armed Vishnu expansion. Life in the Vaikuntha is far superior to life in the material world, particularly because the threefold miseries, adhyatmic, adhibodic, adhidaivic, miseries caused by my body, miseries caused by others, miseries caused by nature, are absent. Furthermore, the Lord's opulence is manifested, his beauty, his strength, his knowledge. All of these attractive features are manifest. However, we do make a comparison, a point-by-point comparison between Vaikuntha and the supermost abode of Goloka Vrindavan, just to make a comparative study. One of the vulnerabilities of the Vaikuntha is that the worship of the Lord is performed in a mode called Aishvarya, Aishvarya Bhav, awe and veneration. When the Lord gives darshan to his devotees, they offer their respectful obeisances. And this kind of bhakti that is following awe and veneration, it has its purpose, it has its function. But this bhakti does not have the ability to attract Bhagavan Sri Krishna. It's too weak. Krishna prefers to engage in these things called ras, intimate dealings. Krishna is Rasa Raj. He's a king of mellow. He's a king of loving relation. Krishna will not settle for people bowing down. He wants his friends to ride on his shoulder. He wants Mother Yashoda to bind his belly with a rope. He wants Nanda to order him to bring his sandals. He wants the gopis, Radharani, to chastise him and to manifest their anger. In this way, by making a comparative study, even higher than the Vaikuntha planets, you've got the other spiritual realms. And the planet of Goloka Vrindavan, Goloka literally means planet of the cows. Here, the Lord is not worshipped as a prince or a king. He's the simple cowherd boy traveling barefoot in the forest. As Krishna leaves his home in the morning, the cows kick up so much dust on the forest path, you cannot see Krishna's form as he enters the forest, but you can make out his presence by the vibration of his flute. Krishna is known by his flute vibration. In this way, the Lord enters the forest, accompanied by his boyhood friends, the cowherd boys, and his other devotees, such as Yashoda and the gopis. They're in deep separation mood as Krishna goes to the forest. And so their minds are rotating. It's like a rotating festival of the mind. They're simply going from one pastime to another, remembering Krishna's activities, because they do not have his physical association at that time. They're remembering how as a child he would grab the tail of the calf and get pulled through the mud. They remember how Krishna was pulled up into the air by the Trinavarta demon, the whirlwind demon. He desired to fly in the sky. The child Krishna had seen birds flying, and he thought, yes, today I would also like to fly. And so the Trinavarta demon came to fulfill that desire, carrying him very high. And when the Lord was satisfied, he closed the pastime and came back to earth. They remember how Krishna has his mala in the same way that we chant on our 108 beads. Krishna has his beads made of jewels. But instead of chanting the names of Krishna and Ram, he's chanting the names of the cows. There are 108 principal groups of cows, and Krishna's chanting their names as he walks through the forest. Sometimes we think that walking on a forest path can be injurious to the foot. There might be some sharp rock, there might be some leaf, dried leaf, or some stick that pokes the Lord. But in Vrindavan, these material considerations are absent. When the Lord touches a rock, it melts like butter. When the Lord steps on a pebble, it becomes like rubber. And the Lord, his skin is by nature very sensitive. You can have a freshly grown leaf touch the Lord's skin, and it's so sensitive it will change color by that touch. Similarly, because Krishna is always barefoot, he's constantly leaving the impressions of his feet in the soft sands of Vrindavan. And we have our headquarters, our Vrindavan headquarters, in a place called Ramanreti. Ramanreti is a sandy bank on the bank of the Yamuna where Krishna would go and play with the cowherd boys in this beautiful soft sand. The residents of Vrindavan are remembering how in the Talavan forest there was this sinful personality, the ass demon, Dhenuka. Dhenuka did not allow the cowherd boys to come and taste the sweet fruits, and he came to chastise Lord Balaram. Dhenuka tried to kick Balaram's chest. Instead, Balaram grabbed him by his hind leg and threw him high into a tree, and then he made a sport of catching different ass demons and throwing them into the trees until they all fell down with a ruckus. The residents remember how the crane demon came and tried to bite Krishna, but the Lord caught hold of his beak and bifurcated him like a blade of grass. They remember how Krishna was chastised after Krishna killed the calf demon. the gopis said, "Oh, you've killed a cow, you've crossed the conventions of religion, you're setting a bad example." So to atone for this, Krishna summoned all the holy rivers, and they came in their personified form. Then taking his flute, he dug a little hole, and the personifications of the holy rivers poured their water. He created a dipping pond known as a kund, and this became known as Sham Kund. Similarly, the gopis took advantage of the opportunity, and using their anklets and bracelets, they dug their own pond and used the water from Sham Kund, and they dipped in that water, and that place is known as Radha Kund. So when we isolate places like Goloka Vrindavan as being of exemplary quality, of exemplary worship, of all the pastime places in Vrindavan, you have so many. You have Raman Reti, you've got Keshi Ghat, you've got Vanksivat, you've got Sevakunj, you've got Manasi Ganga, you've got Govardhan Hill, you've got Suryakund. There's so many different places. Of all the places in Vrindavan, the most super excellent is that place where Radharani dips in the water, Radha Kund. And Rupa Goswami explains that only a greatly fortunate soul will be able to travel to the holy place of Radha Kund, and on its banks engage in ecstatic, loving service, following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. This kind of worship is the mature stage of Krishna worship. It's called Raganuga. Once we've passed through the preliminary stages of devotion, we attain what's called Raganuga Bhakti, where we are remembering the pastimes of Krishna as he associates with the residents of Vrindavan. And when that remembrance becomes very thick like honey, then we become uniquely imbued with a feeling of separation, following in the footsteps of one of the Lord's companions, either his friends, his servitors, his brother like Balaram, the parents, or the gopis in exceptional cases. So that is the most confidential portion of religion, is learning to serve the Lord not in the sense of regulated worship like in Vaikuntha, but in a more superior worship that takes place in Goloka. Only this nature of Raganuga Bhakti can promote us to Goloka Vrindavan. And then of different types of worship in Goloka, Parakiya Ras, the worship performed by the gopis, is considered supermost. Lord Chaitanya would always glorify the worship of the gopis because the gopis were prepared to sacrifice everything to please the Lord. They did not care for their reputation, they didn't care for their dynasty, for ordinary religious considerations, for their spouses. They laid everything on the line for Krishna's pleasure, without any material consideration. Of all gopis, the worship specifically performed by Radharani is considered supermost. And so residents of Vrindavan are always begging Radharani to please engage them in her service. This is what is known as Radha Dasyam. Among the confidential servants of Radharani, one of her chief associates is Rupa Mandri. So now we have what we call Mandri Bhav. There are gopis who are younger than Radharani, and Radharani aspires to associate directly with Krishna. The Manjaris are younger. Their aspiration is not to associate directly with Krishna. They want to assist